Hello everybody. As you can see, I've already begun my run. I wanted to start out with an intro where I normally do it in front of my house, but my neighbors were sweeping the ground, for leaves, right? So there's a bunch of sycamore trees, and all of the bark peels off of them and it gets everywhere. It is super annoying, and my neighbor really likes to take care of the neighborhood. It's really sweet of her. So I was just like, alright, I'll do the intro somewhere else. I'm in this nice lush jungle of Rochester, New York anyways. So today, the purpose of today's run, or runs I should say, is to give you an overview of two shoes that I think could be marathon race day shoes that it's totally not their intended purpose. So, starting out this morning with the Evo SL, let's get to it. I'm genuinely surprised at how unsloppy the Evo SL is feeling. I still notice all the same issues that I've been noticing in it, but that's been nice. Feels like a nice change of pace to have something firm, like properly firm under my foot. Not a lot of the shoes I've been running in are like stereotypically soft, but they feel soft compared to this. And it just feels nice, with the exception of the Salomon Aeroblaze. That is firm. That's perhaps even firmer than this. Reasons I think that the Evo SL could be a marathon shoe for a lot of people. First, Light Strike Pro might be the best marathon racing foam ever made. Controversial. It's not a PIBA, it's a TPEE. But the rubber ball effect of it, meaning the really firm but really responsive quality of it, doesn't have a ton of fatigue resistance, and it does have a ton of fatigue resistance, and it also has a ton of compression set resistance, where this foam never dies. It only gets better with age. Like, all of the other components of your shoe are going to fail, whatever the Light Strike Pro shoe is. From this version of Light Strike Pro, everything else will fail before the foam. On the Evo SL, I think it's the grip that's holding it back, because it does die around like 200 miles. This still feels fine, but the last pair that I had, the grip went around 200. But the foam is reason number one. It is so bouncy and so willing to keep bouncing throughout the distance that you're running. Like, you could run 20 miles in a pair of Evos, no problem. So by extension, you should have no issue running 26.2. The second reason is that it does feel fine to heel strike in, and it also feels good landing midfoot and forefoot. So the whole range of foot strikes are applicable. Third reason, it is light enough. It's not the lightest option, but there are heavier racing shoes from a few generations ago. I believe the Hoka CLO X1 is heavier than the Evo SL, but don't quote me on that. I'll fact check that back in the studio. I don't know if that was the third reason, the second reason. The next reason is that you'll be used to it. If you're using it for training, you'll be used to the way it feels, and you could easily take it for a marathon because of how comfortable, if it's one of the shoes that you love, how comfortable you are running in this shoe. Now, I wouldn't take this for a marathon personally because I've had too many fit issues with it, and I just have this mental like association with a race day shoe that makes me want to run my races in a race day shoe. I'm sure a lot of you feel that way. I'm sure some of you don't. That's why I'm making this video. That's my main reason for not wanting to run in this on a race day. Those two things, actually, the fit and the psychology of it all. I was really hoping the smoke would dissipate because we got some torrential rain yesterday, crazy storms. Typically that would wash away the smoke from the air, but it's like, if anything, it's smokier today. It's also a cooler morning, which I'm grateful for. I got out the door a little earlier today too, might be a part of it, but the afternoon is going to be warm. Gotta get rid of the smoke. Before I go inside and lose all of my brains to the rest of the work day, I wanted to give you a quick overview. Things that happened. One, I went really fast. I mean, not like really, really fast, but compared to how I've been with my leg lately, that was a for sure tempo in the back half, like 6 miles at, maybe 5 miles at 8-minute pace-ish, but like I said, like a while ago, I track all of the runs, so I don't stop my watch at all, so I don't really know. It's saying my average pace is around 8:34, whatever. That's just how it is. You could always delete data later. That's junk data if you need to, but it's not junk data. I would rather have the full picture of like the panoramic view of my run, like a wide-angled lens, so that I capture it all. So what ended up going down, I was really enjoying the Evo SL today, and it wasn't until the last mile, maybe a mile and a half, that I started to get a lot of the same slop fit issue. And I think what's actually happening is I switched to cambered roads from the path. I ran out of path to run on, and I went primarily to sidewalk and cambered road, and this sidewalk in particular had a pretty steep camber, and that's where it started to fit weird. And so that's, I think what's happening is the laces are getting loosened, and then the foot is sliding around, and that wouldn't happen if there were serrated laces, or if Adidas would just generally fix their laces. So those are my thoughts, but there's what I want to do later after I run in the second shoe of the day, which I'll introduce later. I want to go back to the studio and tell you all about what would need to change about the shoe, or what factors would need to align for me to want to use them in a marathon. So with that, catch you on the next run. That's right, the Mach X3 is the afternoon shoe, the second shoe that is ideal for the marathon if you don't want to run in a carbon plated racing shoe. Plan for this run, 8 miles, just like this morning. I actually really like where my training's at with the schedule that I'm on, because today, even though it's a 16-mile double day, it doesn't really feel like all that much compared to the last 2 days, where Monday was a 19-mile double day, which consisted of a 9 and a 10, and yesterday was a 10, so these 2 8s feel like a little snack compared to the last 2 days. I know that's all just mental trickery, but that's the stuff that us runners do to make it all go around. It is much warmer this afternoon, and the smoke is worse. Overall, I'm not too thrilled about this. Hoka Mach X3 is definitely the slower of the two shoes. Feels cumbersome on my foot right now after the Evo SL earlier. Sometimes you think you're gonna cross the road, but you're not. Get the door slammed on you. To the Diary of a CEO podcast with Stephen Bartlett. He's the host. He had a guest on recently whose name I forgot, but I will put it on the screen. My future self will. They were talking about the theory that consciousness is prior, which means basically that the physical realm isn't giving rise to consciousness. It isn't a real thing. It's that consciousness is giving rise to the physical. So, for example, take yourself. You are clearly an experiencing being. You exist in the world. You could touch, taste, smell, hear, feel, and indulge in your emotions and several other faculties of reasoning, of mental acuity, of specialization. You have your interests, your hobbies. All of that is being experienced through, in the traditional view, a physical lens where you're a physical body existing in space-time. But in the view of this scientist, it's actually the experiencing being that came first. And it's essentially all that the universe or universes are comprised of is consciousness, and consciousness has created this physical overlay, or the physically seeming overlay, so that it could entertain itself. Whether it had intention in creating all of reality or not is not part of the conversation. Hi. So, the fundamental nature of reality is not something that you are currently experiencing, nor am I. That's all sort of the way the guest framed it was through VR goggles, where whatever being or entity that is experiencing all of this, that you are and so am I, can be thought of as wearing a VR headset. Some unintelligibly distant or close distance away, if distance even exists itself, but that it could put on any VR headset and experience what it's like to be an ant or a leaf or a rock or any physical being or physically seeming being that's controllable by the entirety of existence. So if anything exists, it can be inhabited with consciousness, because consciousness came first, not the chicken or the egg. Which is sort of like simulation theory, but in simulation theory it presupposes the physical, and that we're in some sort of Russian nesting doll of physical software systems, or like data center layered on top of data center, and it's all simulated, and we're all characters in the game, infinitely up and infinitely down, but that physicality is first, and that there's always another programmer programming. This more says that no, there is just what is. That's the largest category that could ever be. It's all, right, a oneness. I'm getting too out of breath to be talking to you guys. I'm just hot. But you get the idea, you know, collective consciousness, birds, same as people, existing in the same reality in the same way, just only experiencing at different points and different perspectives. Basically, this dude's philosophy was the entire movie of everything everywhere all at once, and that we're all gods. Did you know you were God? The way this relates to running is we, as the experiencing avatars of this giant collective God consciousness, this oneness, are tasked with being infinite and all-knowing, right? Like if consciousness is prior and it exists, and then that is what is manifesting physicality, it is doing so in a manner that could be thought of as infinite. We don't know, obviously, because we're these limited beings that are only experiencing our myopic viewpoint. But if that is indeed what is happening, it would be experiencing everything that there is to experience, and indeed perhaps inventing infinitely more things to experience. So to be all-knowing as this oneness creature, assuming that you and I each have our own separate experiences, which I believe you have a separate experience from me. Not everybody believes that, but most people do. So assuming that, and assuming like a squirrel or, you know, a dog also have their own experience of reality, right? And assuming that consciousness would be prior, and if you can ascribe the properties of consciousness to those beings, then it would make sense to say that whatever this consciousness being is experiencing all of those things, perhaps instantaneously, in order to become all-knowing. And it doesn't know itself, perhaps it doesn't know itself in relation to itself at all points, like how you might find it hard to relate to somebody that doesn't speak your language. It doesn't change the fact that you're both human and that you both are made of the same perceived to be physical material, and you presumably have relatively similar thought patterns. These are things we have to assume because we live in that state of, those are the confines of our perception. And so whatever this God thing, this consciousness, is experiencing itself from all these different perspectives, that's exactly what running is on the very small scale to myself, where every run is a rehashing of the same discussion. It's a reliving of the same life over and over and over again. You're having the same run, but are you really ever having the same run? Does it differ each time you have it? Why would you continue to do it if it didn't differ over time? Running is truly infinite. It can be thought of that way, because if you decide to engage in it, and you don't always have to decide to engage in it, then you are deciding to ascribe the properties of the infinite to it. Because if it were finite, and each run were the same, there would be nothing left to explore. But not even on the ground or out on the road or like wherever you're running, but even within the thought patterns within each run, there is something different to be found each time, even if it's only a day later, and it all builds to a different place, making it truly infinite. And this is just a subset of infinity found within the broader infinity of the human experience. So then some people choose to engage with reality based on or their perceived reality based on a set of circumstances they were born in, paired with events that they perceive to have happened to them over the course of their life. And then they make decisions based on the neurochemistry that they perceive to have. And that's why I really like the Hokamach X3, and somebody else might not. Somebody else might try this on as not a runner 13 years from now when this ends up in a landfill in a third world nation or somewhere in the ocean in the garbage barge. And they might have not the same perception, or maybe you buy the shoe based on hearing that I liked it, and it totally doesn't work for you because you have a totally different felt set of experiences than the shoe, or than I do. But this gets, though, is revealing my next thought ahead of itself. This gets even more complicated when you say, well, if none of the physical world is real and we only render physicality when we observe with our perceived faculties the things that are there. So like when I'm not running or not looking at the Mach X3, it ceases to exist, that type of thing. Then is that thing also part of consciousness? If there is no physical, what gave... Hi, what's up? Good, how are you? Ultra Escalantes, cool shoes. So if the physical world arises as a projection or a consequence of consciousness, however it's being created, whether it is a VR headset, whether it is simulated, whether it's whatever the mechanism is to translate consciousness into physical perception, it doesn't beg the question. I have a question as to whether or not all physical things, physically appearing things, are imbued with the same consciousness. Because if consciousness is prior, how come it appears like there are physical things? And does that imply that physical things that don't move or that don't appear to move have consciousness? So start with a medium level example. A tree is alive by whatever taxonomical scientific representation of life we have, which is admittedly imperfect and does not aim at the real nature of reality, only the nature of the perceivably physical. But by all our best guesses, trees are alive. And do trees feel? Do trees think? They're pretty still, but we know that they send, I think, pheromonal impulses through the mycelial network underground to communicate with other trees if there's a danger lurking nearby to the collected forest. Seems like a collected unconscious to me. So if trees are alive and mushrooms are doing the communicating, probably they could be thought of as being alive, theoretically. Because life is nothing more than a physicalist definition of a physicalist process. But if everything came from consciousness and not from physicality, then what's to say that our life definition of the physical couldn't extend to rocks, perhaps? And this is panpsychism. This is the theory that everything, from humans to dogs to squirrels to trees to rocks to indeed the Hoka Mach X3, all have consciousness. A quick example of the rhythmic nature of life. Over there is where I got to when my camera died, or ran out of storage, not died, on my long run on Sunday. I come on this side of the road a ton of all the power lines. You can even see the smoke in the background. I hope that comes out on video. It's so smoky. But I was over yonder on the other side of the canal, or is that the river? I think it's the canal. Crazy though. And then hopefully I don't run out of storage today. I've been yapping your ears off. So before I just let it rip for the last couple of miles and shut up, why do I think the Hoka Mach X3 would make a good marathon shoe? For some people. It's not going to be for everybody. It is for sure a little slow as a shoe. But if you are in that right around 4-hour mark for the marathon. This will just glue you right into that pace, and you'll just not, I don't think you'll ever have to think about it the entire race. Then imbuing the shoe with consciousness out here, that's how little I'm thinking about it. It is slow. It is heavy and slow. It's heavier than the CLOX one. It's heavier than the Evo SL by a wide margin. It's like 270 grams. It's better than the Rocket X3, that's for sure. If you really wanted to have some carbon and you wanted it to be exactly like the Rocket X3 except for, or have the Rocket X3 be exactly like the Mach X3 except for being harsh to run in, at least for me in the way that I run, then you could totally go with the Rocket. But I think that for a 4-hour marathon, this would be a really good option. And I think the Evo SL would slot into more of that, like 3:30 to 4. Could probably go 4 in it. The Evo is going to make you want to go faster than you should, and this might make you feel like you're going slower than you are. Some differences. Before we get too involved in the entire thesis of today's run and comparison and suggestion for non-carbon shoes for the marathon, I just want to reflect for a moment on the Hoka Mach X3. Second run of the day. It was faster than the Evo SL with some paces in the 7s for the last 3 miles. I sort of shut off the camera and let it rip, like I said in the video, and it felt really good. I was feeling good today. This is the best that I've felt since my leg came under attack with ailments, and I'm really grateful. It feels like I have power back in my step now, and both runs today felt that way, but the Mach X3 even more in the afternoon. Don't know if that's a factor of it being the shoe that it is, or if it's just that I felt really good. I drank a bunch of coffee beforehand. Like, I was having a stressful meeting. Not for me, just like a generally grouply stressful meeting. And I was over caffeinated for it. So right afterwards, I went on a run. And sometimes you go on a run to blow off some steam. So that was what I did in the Mach X3. I'm sure you heard that in my voice on the run. The purpose of this video, which is 2 shoes that you could use for the marathon that are not carbon-plated racing shoes. They are not exactly super similar in construction. Let's start with the Evo. Everybody knows the Evo. It's the fanboy favorite of Adidas, also known as Adidas in some circles. Full Light Strike Pro, plastic shank, some rubber, bad upper. That sums up the shoe. It is not plated in a traditional sense. I mean, you could see that it's a bit of a flexible shoe. Not the most flexible in the world. That would be maybe the Adios 9 of the ones that I've run in recently. But flexible enough, really nice rocker, and perhaps too gradual for some people. For me, maybe, I think that could be a component of what forces you to, in the Evo SL, to like be clawed along almost against your will. I've done this motion so many times for representing the way that the Evo SL rides. It rides like a motorcycle, where once you get up on the plane, like on the, then you are moving and moving and moving. And I think that has to do with the rocker. That could be perhaps too aggressive sometimes in certain circumstances. Same cannot be said for the Mach. It is not too aggressive ever. I've found it perhaps suffers from the opposite extreme, where it is definitely a heavier shoe and it definitely is not the most nimble navigator, as it were, but it is no slouch either. So Evo SL has been talked about ad infinitum. It is a, up-tempo daily trainer. The reason that I think it could work for the marathon for a lot of people is it is full race foam. It is firm, and that type of firmness will continue to bounce you back. It's like bouncy ball firmness, not like concrete firmness, not like stiff EVA in the wintertime type of brickish firmness. No, this is like a rubberized bouncy ball of a shoe. On the other end, you have the Mach X3. It is dual foam construction. So the orange is the PIBA, the white and yellow is the EVA. It is overstacked. So if you care about that for your marathon, then just to know it's not a legal racing shoe, but I don't think that matters for 99% of humanity plus. It has a thicker upper, more comfortable overall upper, although there is some irritation that has persisted in my big toe on my longer foot. It's not been painful yet, and so that's why I hesitate to even like. It has to be mentioned, but it is not something that's bothered me personally. I do, however, notice that I am constantly getting rocks in these guys. Today it was actually half of a walnut. Don't know where I picked that up, but like I said, I was cruising in the second half of that run, so it must have been that. And what else on this? Why do I think it would be good for the marathon? I think it would be good particularly for people that are aiming for around 4 hours, maybe more time on feet than that. So like in the 4 to 5 hour range. Potentially, you could use this for down to 3:45. It does start feeling heavier the more you pick up the pace. Like you're bringing more weight up on your leg, like the pendulum of your leg requires more energy to lift. So it's just something to be noted. But in the 4 to 5 hours, maybe stretching it down to 3:45, I think it could work. Why do I think it could work? I think that both of these share something here, and it's that they have a really good fatigue resistance where I feel like I can run an infinite number of miles in either of these without my feet feeling like, and I mean my feet, like the bottom of my feet, feeling like there's anything amiss or awry or like harsh or anything. So like a Takumi Sen 11, I wouldn't take that for the marathon distance, despite ultimately I do like the shoe. It's not my favorite that I've tested recently, and I do still need to get more miles in it to give you a more up-to-date sentiment analysis on it. But that is something that I totally would never take for the marathon because it feels painful underfoot after a certain amount of time. It feels like you're pounding pavement. These two have both, this because of the stack and this because of the brilliant foam, have abstracted away the need to think of pavement in the whole process of running. Like when we run, we think, of whatever we're thinking about in the day or nothing. Maybe we let our mind wander. And these allow you to do it. And on race day, something like the Takumi, or if you like, for whatever reason, if you wanted to run it in the most recent Kinvara, or like the Adios 9 is another good example. Those, more power to you. I saw a girl out on the run today wearing Escalante racers, the Escalante 2 racers, and I was like, man, that's a powerful human being to be able to. I used to be of the zero drop and barefoot tribe for sure. Back in high school when I was running, I was totally on that ethos and that mentality, and that high horse to some degree. And I'm so proud of her for running that, whatever run she was running in the Escalante racers. But this is a huge digression. That shoe does not abstract away pavement from your thought. It very much reminds you that you're running on pavement, which can be good for your proprioception, and everybody should run barefoot sometimes. I'm not saying that that's something that you shouldn't do. And I think that actually barefoot strides are one of the most useful tools at a runner's disposal to understand their own gait and how to navigate actual running with it. But for the marathon distance, for almost everybody out there, you're going to want a big stack and a durable stack that doesn't feel like it wears down over the course of the run. So both of these excel at that. Some things that I wanted to talk about that I think
I would want to see either changed or like circumstances that would have to align for me to personally to want to use these for the marathon. So I wouldn't reach for either of these personally for the marathon because I would pick out, well, probably the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, but I would pick up a marathon racing shoe because it feels special to me. And it feels like that's a way to celebrate this hobby that we're all into, running and running shoes. Like you want to save your best for your best and don that suit upon the day, you know, it's going to battle. But that being said, not everybody feels that way. And there's every justification for wanting to have either a one shoe rotation or just running in what you're comfortable with for the marathon. There have been so many nightmare stories of people like trying a new shoe for the first time for the marathon, slices their feet up or like blows out their Achilles or whatever. It just doesn't work for them on race day. So why not have a shoe that you trust and that you have a lot of experience in for race day? I'm actually just noticing that. Look at this. I don't think it's going to come off, but if I continue to fiddle with it, that's crazy. I never noticed that before. Things that I would need to either change or for me to somehow need to mitigate in the Evo SL, for me personally to use it for race day, it all is the upper. That's actually all that there is. I think that this midsole could actually work for me for race day. If they could figure out a way to not have my foot drift inside the shoe when I encounter cambered surfaces, that's a huge one. And I think that these two are connected. If they could put real laces in a running shoe for once ever, Adidas, please, for the love of God. I think that actually really does make a difference in the case of the Evo SL for me. And I was ripping in this for a while. It felt really good. I was feeling back on my game. I was taking off battery saver mode. And I was just letting the ground have it. But then towards the end of the run, I actually did have to let up a little bit. And it was just because I was getting the same slop fit thing again with my foot drifting in the shoe. This is immediately following being on some more like steeply cambered roads, but you know, I'm trying to problem solve here. But that doesn't happen in every pair of shoes that I own. It happens sometimes in some other shoes, but not as reliably as in the Evo. So that's what I would need to change about the Evo. I think that maybe new laces, new tongue would be really all it needs. Really, like a total upper overhaul would be fine by me, and that's what they should do in the next version of this. But man, that's going to be a shoe when that comes out, the second version of this, which is probably not for another 2 to 3 years. But when that comes out, it's going to be a winner for sure. But that's enough about the Evo. It's a good summary of what I think needs to change about it. Not much else. Like the midsole could stay exactly the same. Even the same exact formulation of Lightstrike Pro. Do not change it. Okay. So Mach X3, what would I need to change about this for it to be a marathon shoe? Needs to lose 50 grams of weight. Simple. It's really that simple. Otherwise, I would have no problem taking this over a carbon plated racing shoe if they could get it as light without putting carbon in here. I mean, it is not as flexible as the Evo for sure, but it's also not as, or it's more flexible than carbon. And I think that does really well for my legs in the long run. I don't feel anywhere near as beat up running in this as I would from a carbon shoe on like a long run. So I did 19 in this last Sunday, and my legs honestly have been recovering since then. Like I was still coming in from like an injury or a pain in my leg, and running 19 miles in the shoe did not aggravate it. So that's high praise, to say the least. It would just need to lose like, I mean, ideally it would lose 70 grams, but they're never going to do that. That's not what the point of this shoe is. So this is never going to be a marathon shoe for me, not the next iteration, not ever, not now, forever. It will never be a race day shoe for me due to the weight. But that might not be such a factor for a lot of people, because a lot of people might have longer legs than I do, and those legs would have like think of them like a hinge that are like two connected. It's hard to do with an arm because an arm is not a leg, but think of this as like a pendulum. If the pendulum's longer, and you're pulling up from the knee as well, so your knee being here and your elbow, your knee being here and your hip joint being here, you throw this up, your foot comes down, and if it's longer, if the whole chain is longer, there's going to be a lot more force required to bring it up, but also your body will have a lot more force to bring that up because you're a larger, taller human being. And then when the leg comes down, it's going to enact more forces upon the ground. And the weight of the shoe is a smaller fraction of the weight of the pendulum overall. Like you have a larger leg, you have a heavier pendulum. The heavier pendulum generates more force into the ground, right? The shoe is less of a factor for taller people or for bigger people, right? So this is why, for me, this wouldn't work for a marathon, but bigger and taller people, this would be a total weapon on race day because it's so comfortable. It's such a comfortable shoe. I'm gonna put it, this is also, by the way, not just the 50-mile review of this shoe. This is like the 60-mile review of this shoe. I got this like a week ago. Not really sure. I think it was like a week ago. So this doubles for me putting out yet another piece of content on the Hoka Mach X3. I can't wait for people to be able to buy this because it really is that good. For me personally, it's that good. And it's truly astonishing that I had such a negative opinion of the Rocket X3 because they are so similar in design. Just a few design elements. It illustrates the idea that even the subtlest differences between shoes could totally affect how they feel on somebody's feet. And, you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a shoe doctor or a scientist or a mathematician or biomechanical engineer or whatever. I'm not a mechanist. I know nothing. But what I do know is that this works for me and the Rocket X3 doesn't for some reason in their shoe design. And so to wrap it all up, I think that these are excellent options if you want to run a marathon. The Mach X3 from Hoka and the Adidas Adios, Adizero, Abracadabra, Amabaraba, Evo SL. Oh, and I did want to say, this is a video about alternatives to carbon race shoes, but an alternative to lightweight carbon race shoes would be the Hoka CLO X1. There's been a lot of coverage on that. Like that would be a good time on feet option for people that want to run a marathon. I don't even know if you could buy it anymore. So that's why it's not on this video, as well as it is made of, it has a carbon plate. Okay, all right, I've rambled on for too long. This is gonna be a wacky episode. I appreciate your attention. See ya.